Anita. Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia Beavers. I'm a congressional reporter at Politico, focused on covering the House, and more specifically, House Republicans. You may also know my name from previously writing the Huddle newsletter. For our final conversation of the day, I want to introduce Congresswoman Maria Elvira Salazar. She's a Republican representing several parts of South Florida, most notably Miami. Congresswoman Salazar took office in 2020 in what has been called the Year of the Republican Woman, when the GOP added more than a dozen new women to its ranks. Before that, Congresswoman Salazar worked as an award-winning broadcast journalist, whose career highlights include interviewing Venezuela's Nicolas Maduro and Cuban dictator Fidel Castro. I'm going to be talking to Congresswoman Salazar on shaping the Republican women's agenda. With President Biden in the White House, Democrats in control of Congress, we've heard a lot over the past year about how Democrats say their policy agenda will benefit women. We want to hear from Congresswoman Salazar. What is the Republican Party's answer to that, and what are the policies GOP leaders are putting forth to help women moving forward? And is there room for bipartisanship on this issue? And how are women in Congress planning to bolster their ranks, building on their record gains they made in 2020? As a reminder, you can follow the conversation on Twitter using the hashtag #RuleWithUs, and you can tweet us at Politico Live. With that, let's welcome Congresswoman Salazar. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, Olivia. Wonderful to be with you on television. This is a lot better than just standing on the hallways waiting for Congress people to come and give you quotes, right?
That's the joy of print reporting.
To other people through the cameras, right? I miss this.
Well, thanks for joining us, and let's kick off the conversation. I want to ask you. I want to ask you. You came in during this historic year, the year of the Republican woman. In a few weeks, you will have served a full year in Congress. I want to ask, have you noticed a change in policy, messaging, and recruitment because of the fact there are more Republican women who were elected in 2020?
Well, I have seen many things because, as you said, this is the first time that I hold an elected official position. Mm-hmm. I was on television for so many years, and being in Congress is a very big change. What I see is that we need to be more efficient. We need to work more for the people. I come from the private sector, and I have noticed that the public sector doesn't serve the constituency or the constituents as efficiently or effectively as it should. And that's one of the reasons why I came to Congress, in order to help the American agenda, or to help this country work better for not only for people that live in District Number 27, but for every other American, because I'm in love with the system. But I'm sure we're going to be talking about that a little bit more.
Absolutely. And I know that this is your first year in Congress, and you just mentioned that. But I'm curious if you've noticed, just from when you came in to now a few weeks later, if you've noticed having more women in Congress this year has maybe changed the party at all from when you came in and to this point now?
Well, I don't have a point of reference. I know that the Republican Party is pretty inclusive. As I'm sure you've heard me saying, I am a brown girl from the hood with an accent. I'm the daughter of political refugees. I was able to win one of the most difficult races in the country. The GOP helped me, and I have felt welcomed, just like I have felt welcomed all my life in this country. Maybe I do have some points of reference from what I have lived in those countries that I covered. Central America, Latin America, where women and the political actors are not treated as nicely and as respectfully as I have felt being treated in the GOP. So maybe I do have points of reference that other people in this conversation don't have. And for that reason, I'm saying that we're still in the best seat of power of the world, which is Congress, within the best political party, one that wants to represent America and in all its diversity. And I think that the GOP is doing pretty well with it. And we're including more people of color, more ethnic congresspeople or ethnic backgrounds are included in the roster that represents the GOP. That's
You
what I
just sort of
felt.
touched on You just sort of touched on it, but do you think that the party will have continued success recruiting and electing women and minorities to fill what has historically been a party that is white and male?
Listen, this party represents the interests of the American people. And I believe that as we progress and as we see that women and people of color and minority care about the economy, and that is, for me, that's the bottom line. Whether you are Asian American or brown or African American or white American, it doesn't matter. What you want to do is that you want to represent and you want to have a good economy. And that's what I think we are. The right now is becoming the party of the middle class. And who is the middle class? Anyone that wants to live the American dream. From the browns to the blacks to the whites to the everyone wants to live the American dream. And I think the GOP is the best platform to do that. And I think I'm a very good example. As I said, I'm a brown girl from the hood, and my constituents and my district elected me because of that American dream and desire to acquire it.
Thank you. And I'm curious if you came in sort of at a weird politically toxic time. January 6th happened, tensions between the two parties were at an all-time low. Have you been
Yeah.
able to, in your time here, been able to get to know any House Democratic women as well? And are you seeing room for bipartisanship with them and on any particular issues,
It's
or
a very
Democrats in
good
general?
question. I have reached out to Cori Bush. I've reached out to AOC. I've reached out to Ilhan Omar because I believe that they were elected and that they are respectable members of Congress, that I would like to get to know them. I'm not sure they really want to get to know me that well. And I'm going to try once again, specifically Cori Bush. I went to talk to her because she's an important member of the Black Caucus. And I went to talk to her and ask her to please help me with the Afro-Cubans that are being massacred on the streets of Havana. Because if they have George Floyd, which I understand that we have to fight for the rights of the African Americans in this country, I would like the Black Caucus to help me fight for the rights of the Afro-Cubans on the streets of Havana. Human rights are human rights across the board. And I haven't had much victory or much success, but I'm still waiting. I do believe that the American system is it embraces everyone, from Cori Bush to Maria Salazar. And maybe I believe it. I'm not sure if they do, but I do, because I do believe that we're all products of the American exceptionality, and we're all serving in the most important body of democracy, the seat of power for the world. But
That's interesting that you bring that. That's interesting that you bring them up. I know when you were coming in, there's a progressive squad, and they're both members of that group. You came in talking about having, I think, the Freedom Force, which was supposed to be a Republican counterweight, it seemed. Why did you think that this was important, and has this come together?
Because the fact that I don't believe in the democratic socialist ideas that they are embracing does not mean that we could find common ground in one area, which is to defend the Afro-Cubans and the African American rights. One thing may have nothing to do with the other. Like, we may not agree with the embargo against the island of Cuba. We could agree that every Cuban deserves human rights. So I'm always trying to look for areas where we can work together. And I reached out to Hakeem Jeffries, and I went to see him, and I went to see Cori Bush, and I sought her, and I went to talk to, like I said, to AOC, because I believe that we could work together. It depends on them of wanting to work with us. I'm telling you, like I said, I have no point of reference because I just got here. But I do tell you that this bipartisanship that President Biden promised is not playing out. It's not out there. And I could say that I'm one of the most bipartisan members in Congress because, I represent 1/3 Democrats, 1/3 Republicans, and 1/3 independents. So I represent everyone. And I'm very conscious of who voted for me. And some of those
Mhm.
people would like to embrace some of the ideas that the Democrats have. So I've been reaching out to them. I have co-sponsored many different legislations with some members of the Democratic Party. So hey, we're all Americans, the best system in the world. So let's enjoy it.
Now I want to pivot and more broadly ask you about how the GOP is appealing to women voters. We saw earlier this month, Democrats faced a major defeat in Virginia with Glenn Youngkin defeating Terry McAuliffe for the governor's mansion and ending what was basically a failure by the GOP to win statewide in more than a decade. But what has been particularly interesting about this election, at least according to exit polls, was that white women swung by double digits away from Democrats to Youngkin. And the message from Republicans on education, from COVID closures to fears about the critical race theory, played a key role. What do you think happened here? Was this just good timing? Is this momentum that you think the
Ah,
GOP
it's just
can
common
sustain?
sense, Olivia. It's common sense, which is the least common of all senses. It's common sense. Women have common sense, whether they are Latinos, whether they're African Americans, whether they're white Americans, even if they're Martians. Women care about their kids. Women care that they can put the best food on the table. Women care that their children learn how to read, write, math, and they can go to college and have a better education than they did. That's what I want for my kids. Women care to be able to buy them better clothing and not to pay so much at the gas station. So
Mhm.
it's simple. Men, I think we're more rational. Why? Because we give birth. Once you give birth, everything is put aside, and the only thing you think about is the well-being of that child. I have a 21 and a 22, and I still think that they're 1 and 2. I'm still thinking, did you eat? Are you okay? Do you have money? What are you going to do? Who's that boy? Mothers are mothers. Women are mothers. And I think the Virginian ladies proved it. Don't mess with my kids in school. I need better prices so I can, with the money that I have in my pocket, buy better products, whether it's food or clothing or entertainment for my children. That's it. It has nothing to do with parties. It has to do with common sense.
Thank you. Um, you told me in February, quote, "It's time for us to be sending the right message to the largest minority in the country. We, for the last 30 years since Ronald Reagan, have not sent the right message to the Browns." Equus
You got
research suggests, sorry?
You got it, Olivia. You remember well.
Equus research suggests that Latinas had more of a rightward shift in last year's election, more than Latino men. I'm curious, does the GOP have a good message or outreach to Latina community, minority women, and how do you think that this can improve?
Well, I'm glad that you're giving me this platform because, as you know, I'm going to be presenting an immigration reform law that it wants to give dignity to the Browns in this country. Everyone that has been here for more than 5 years. I'm going to give you some of the details later on, but I think I should say that the GOP in this country should give dignity to those people who have been here for some time and have contributed to the American economy and have not committed a crime. The problem with the Democratic Party is that the Latinos, they have been waiting for the Dems to fulfill their promises. And the problem is that since Ronald Reagan in 1986, the Dems have been promising a lot of stuff to my community and they have not delivered. So that's why I, as a good brown girl from the hood, and I am very, very proud of being a brown girl from the hood who made it to Congress, that I am here to defend and to speak for those people who were my viewers, and some of them turn into my voters. The brown community in this country, the largest minority in the country, 20% of the population, 60 million people, we want dignity. And unfortunately, the Democratic Party has played political football with us since Reagan. I was at that press conference where he promised that within the first 100 days of his presidency, he was going to give immigration reform law. And you know what happened? He used that political capital into Obamacare. And that's fine. He's the president. He could have used that political capital into whatever thing he wanted. But don't lie to us. And then now in 2020, President Biden said the same thing. Within the first 100 days of my presidency, I am going to give immigration reform law. And you know what? He has abandoned us as well. For what? For childcare, for elderly care, for dental care, and for vision care. And that's fine. He's the president. He can use that, but do not lie to us. So I am tired because I know my community very well. I speak the language perfectly. I cater to them through Spanish television. So I know from California to New York what my people are thinking. And it's time for us to vote with those who give us a solution, not those who want to play with us and use us as political chips in order to exchange us for one thing or another. And that is what's happening with the Dems. So I assure you that my immigration reform law is going to bring some solutions. And something else that I always tell you when I see you on the floor, what's happening at the border that affects us first and foremost. Why? Because those people who are coming in unvetted could be child sex traffickers, they could be coyotes, they could be drug dealers. You know where they're going to wind up at? In our barrios, our neighborhoods, because they're not going to go to where you live or where the people that are watching us live. No, they're going to wind up where my maid lives or my jardinero. I said my gardener. So you see, my maid and my gardener are not very happy with what's happening at the border. But has anyone asked them? No, because they are visible. And I don't like it. And it's time to stop that aggression against the brown community in this country.
I know you talked about Democrats, but Republicans have also tried and failed to fix immigration system. And if I understand correctly, from the framework that you rolled out, a lot of Republicans are basically further away from the plan, at least the talking points of the plan that you presented. And I'm curious how you plan to get your own party on board with addressing this issue.
My party is on board. My party is on board. Now I want to see what the Dems are going to do, because this is going to be a GOP proposal. This is a legislation that is going to be proposed by a brown girl from the GOP from the city of Miami. And I am going to invite Speaker Pelosi and the leadership within the Democratic Party to embrace my bill, because there's always dignity. And you know how I know we want dignity? Because I have asked them. Because like I said, that was my audience. So I know exactly what they're thinking. Because, the most of Browns in the United States watch either Univision, Telemundo, Estrella, or Azteca. Those are the four most important networks in this country. I'm sure maybe you don't even know what they are, but they have millions and millions of viewers. And I worked for them, for all of them. So what I'm saying is that the GOP understands that we need to take care of those people who are here. And let me just point something out to you. Nancy Pelosi, under President Trump, she had this proposal that she could give 1.8 million Dreamers and TPS and their parents some type of legality in exchange for border security. We're not against border security. We don't want the criminals and the coyotes and the child sex traffickers coming in. But then Madam Speaker said no. So if she cared so much about our Dreamers and our DACA children, why did she say no? Because at the end, they don't care. But you know what? I do, and my party will too.
Congressman, I want to pivot to another policy question for you. It's one that has been getting a lot of attention recently. It's a national paid family leave program, which many think is necessary for women who are trying to juggle careers and families. Republicans haven't seemed to fully embrace the idea, yet a recent Morning Consult poll showed that 62% of Republican women and 56% of Republican men think that paid family leave should be included in Democrats' reconciliation bill. Given these numbers, do you think that Republicans should support paid family leave?
I don't have any problems if it's a standalone bill. My problem is to give 1.57, whatever trillion dollars into the economy. Because when you are talking about the paid leave, you're just talking about one line or three lines out of 2,100 pages. What else is there? So I don't want to help you in one end and then harm you in 10 other points. So if it's a standalone bill, absolutely. But the problem right now with, I was telling you, for Virginians and the rest of the women in the United States is how much do they have to pay for gas, for clothing, for food, for uniforms, and for shoes for their kids. And that's going up. And this reconciliation, whatever you want to call it, is going to just give a lot more money to this economy, is going to fuel inflation, which is exactly the opposite of what we need. And then on top of that, most of my constituents they're not millionaires. Very upset with this provision next to the family paid leave is this SALT, the SALT tax break, which is for millionaires. Don't like that. Why do I have to give some money to the millionaires and at the expense of the middle class? So you see, when you talk about one portion of the bill, you got to talk about the 2,800 pages at the same time. That's all I'm saying. So Dems do not have the monopoly on compassion. We are compassionate too, but we are compassionate across the board. And a good economy is the best thing we can do for our lower and middle class Americans.
Congresswoman, do you think that House Republicans are setting a good example of how they can make room for women in leadership?
Well, I'm a good example. They supported me. They have treated me with utmost respect. And if not, I will tell you, because being a politician is not my career. My career was being on television, something that I'm doing right now, for 35 years, speaking in Spanish and reporting the news, including Washington. So I tell you as it is. And the GOP, they have been those white boys that you're talking to me about, they have been inclusive, respectful, loving, and they have said, Maria, you're one of the rock stars of the party. I don't need to be a rock star anymore. Thank you. I've done enough. I'm here to help the Republican Party, the United States, and District number 27. And the moment I feel that I'm not doing that, you know what I'm going to do? Go back home and enjoy my retirement.
I want to ask the last question for you, and I know you have to go, so thank you for your time.
Tell me. I
Less
think
than an
you're
hour.
fantastic. You're doing so great.
Thank you so much. Less than an hour ago, just 2 Republicans voted to censor and strip Congressman Gosar of his 2 committees over the video he posted depicting an anime video depicting violence against Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and President Joe Biden. You, I believe, were someone who voted to strip Marjorie Taylor Greene off of her committee earlier this year over some of her previous remarks before she came to Congress. Would you have supported the vote today if Gosar was not being stripped of his committees?
Listen, this is all a farce. And why is that? Because if this congressman put up that video, Congressman Gosar put up that video that I hear, according to my staffers, that one of his staffers put it up, and then he brought it down and he apologized. If we're going to do that to him and we're going to vote against his committee assignments, then we have to talk about Maxine Waters on the other side, who went on the streets and she went on television and she said, we have to call and we have to stand and be violent. Whatever she said, I don't remember, but I know that she inferred violence. So if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. The difference between Gosar and Marjorie Taylor Greene is that specifically Mrs. Greene insulted or spewed anti-Semitic comments against a very important sector of District number 27, which is the Jewish American community in Miami Beach. So I received a lot of calls from that Jewish community telling me that they were pretty offended because Marjorie Taylor Greene specifically said that the Jewish community had started the California wildfires and that they were responsible for the disaster in that state. I cannot have accepted that. But Gosar, he just put up a cartoon which I haven't seen. So once again, what is that Madam Speaker doing? Playing politics. But the American people are not playing politics. They're trying to see how they pay their bills and pay for more, for higher prices in food and in gas. You see, so I think we should stop playing games in Washington. And you know something, Olivia? Now, just to conclude this conversation, you know, I come from the private sector. And I worked in the private sector for 35 years. If I did not produce ratings, I didn't have a contract. I think that most or many people here in Congress should have that experience. Just going to the private sector, working there for a couple of years, really having to make a salary and deliver some goods. And then if they come back here, they will behave completely differently. That's what I think should happen. We should pass a resolution that everyone who comes to Congress needs to have 7 or 9 years out in the private sector in any walk of life, and you'll see how things will be completely different.
Congresswoman Salazar, it's been a pleasure having you join us for our inaugural Women
You
Rule.
are a rock star. You are one of the stars. I love
Thank you. It was great hearing you talk about immigration and what you think that the party can do more to include more Latinas and reach out to more women. With that, let's turn it over.
I'm living proof that they are behaving pretty well, and they understand that America is diverse and they are inclusive. And I am the perfect example of what I'm just telling you. Otherwise, I would be telling you otherwise. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.